Hello, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I'm very delighted to be here in this great forum. Just before starting, I would like to thank all the organizations teams, especially Business France and all my colleagues present today. Just perhaps on the next slide, a few words to introduce myself. Oh, it's me, sorry. I'm Vincent DELCOURT, as I said. I'm working for SNCF, the French railway company, and I'm in charge of innovation strategy. I'm here today with my colleague Samuel DE, who is in charge of H2 strategy. Perhaps just a few words about what is SNCF. I'm sure you know the word SNCF, but more figures to describe our company. SNCF is a French national railway company, of course, and perhaps just a few figures. We operate more than 50,000 trains per day, and perhaps to give you an idea of the size of our network, the network is more than 30,000 kilometers. And one point which is really important regarding to the H2 development is the fact that half of the network is non-electrified. What does it mean? It means that every day we are operating diesel train. And of course, we are really committed to change that. How? Of course, by using H2, but not only. Another point which is really important, it's the modal share of railway transport in France. The modal share is not so important, only 10% of passenger transport. It means the main uses for transport in France is car. But if we have only 10% of modal share, we produce only 0.6% of the CO2 emissions by the transport sector in France. Why? Because, as I said, if half of the network is non-electrified, if we operate a lot of diesel trains, in the same time, we use a lot of high-speed train, electric train, with a very low emission level of CO2. So let's go further. Let's go further to the descriptions of our activities in the group. As I said in my introductions, of course, we are operating trains, we are operating rolling stock. But in the same times, we are managing, maintaining, and developing infrastructures for the railway, but as my previous colleague said, were really interesting, perhaps, to participate to the development of other infrastructures, such as energy infrastructures. In the same times, we are developing, we are building stations all over the world, and of course, there is a link, a strong link between the place of the station in the city and the development of transport and a low-carbon mobility. Perhaps another name that you could know is Keolis. Keolis is a part of the SNCF group and is in charge of public transport all over the world, especially in North America, in Australia, and so on. So if we talk about public transport, of course, we are thinking about buses. And more public authorities are asking us to operate low-carbon buses and, of course, H2 buses. If I go further on these descriptions, I can talk about freight. Freight, that's the same thing. Freight is, of course, for Europe to transport goods all over our continent, but no, it's a global market all over the world. So, as I said, for the buses, we are thinking about the development of H2 trucks. This short introduction is just to give you an overview of what is our group and why we are committed in the H2 system. So, as I said, we have three main challenges. The first one, which is not a surprise for all of you, is of course to be able to achieve our environmental, ecological transitions. Another point is to be prepared for the competitions. For the moment, only one state operator is in France. It's our company. But in the next months, in the next years, competitions will be opened. So we are truly sure that working, developing skills, developing technologies about new energy systems will be a main advantage in our competitions. And the last point is the move, the shift of the customer expectations. Of course, after the sanitary crisis, the expectations in terms of transport are changing. So what we want to do, we want, of course, to play on the cost management, to reduce our cost, to be more efficient. We want to develop digitizations of the railway systems. We want to of course, to well understand our customers' expectations. And, of course, to accelerate the decarbonizations of our systems. So to do that, as I said, we are developing a portfolio of solutions. Here, it's the H2 Forum, and at the same time, in another corner, the Battery Forum. So we are working on developing new fuel. We are working to develop battery train and H2 train. Why? Why are we developing a portfolio and not only one solution? Because, as I said, we operate trains all over the country. So regarding the operating expectations, regarding the environment of operating systems, regarding to the conditions, weather conditions from the north to the south of the France, we are sure that we need to develop few solutions. And the idea to develop these solutions is to reach two main milestones. The first one is to be able to reduce by 30% our CO2 and gas emissions by 2030. That's our first steps. And the second one is the same approximately all over the Europe for mainly companies in France and in Europe, is to achieve our carbon neutrality by 2050. So, if I talk about H2 in railway, so as I said, SNCF is really committed to develop and to operate H2 train. So to do that, we have worked with manufacturers, Alstom. We have worked with different public authorities to be able to order a first set of hydrogen train. So the first 12 H2 trains will operate from the north to the south of France. And we are sure that we spend a lot of time not only to develop the train, but as we said, I would like just to stop a few seconds about what is, for me, a key driver of this project, which is to be sure that all safety rules will be completely analysis. So, as I said, we will operate 12 trains, 12 H2 trains by the end of 2025 in France. And it's not the end of the story. It's just a milestone. We want to go further. We are sure that in the next decade, we'll be able to operate around 100 trains, H2 trains. So that's just a starting point of the adventure. I don't know, but I think it could be very interesting to share with you a few technical details about what is our H2 trains. Because it's not only an H2 trains, it's more than a simple fuel cell train. Because, as I said, a port of our network is electrified and another port is not electrified. So the trains will be a bi-mode train. What does it mean? It means when the train is operated under electrified line, we could use energy supplied by the catenary and the pantograph to the train. And when the line is non-electrified, of course, we will use hydrogen. So in the same train, the power tractions will be supplied, of course, all the time by electricity coming from the network, from the electricity grid, and in another port will be produced on board. So the idea is not just to remove and to replace our diesel power pack. We want, of course, to be able to add a fuel cell, to add the H2 storage, to add batteries, to develop a new energy management systems. And of course, the main constraints are the volume, because in the train, most of the volume is done for passengers. So the only way to do that is to use the roof of the train to be able to have this kind of fuel systems, H2 trunks on the train. If I talk about power, the power of the fuel cell is around 330 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt, sorry. And we have two fuel cells. If I talk about H2 storage, the amount of H2 stored on board is around 200 kilograms of H2 under 350 bars. The main difference between an H2 train and a diesel train is, of course, the autonomy, the range. The range will be around 500 kilometers. So, if we want to be more competitive, we have to work with different manufacturers to be able to have another way of storage on board. The idea is perhaps to use another pressure, perhaps 700 bars, and perhaps, and we were very interesting about a few discussions with Korean companies about the fact to use liquid hydrogens, which is a big gap for us if we want to go to a larger range for the train. So, as I said, that's only the beginning of the story. We have many technical challenges to tackle if we want to go further. And I'm sure to do that, we need to reinforce two things. The first one is to work on the reductions of the cost, the investments and operation cost. And to do that, as I said, we want to operate trains, but we want to merge other services as buses, heavy trucks, and perhaps to use stationary uses as H2 genset for a safety generator. So that's the first idea, is not to have only one use, but to be able to merge different uses. And if I go larger, if I enlarge my scope, the idea is, of course, to merge, as Raphael explained, to merge with other industrial activities and to be connected to a backbone, an H2 backbone. Just a few words about the development, the time scale between the development of mobility uses and the energy infrastructures. The main point is, if we want to be sure to operate in a good conditions, we have to develop in the same times the uses, and for my part mobility uses, and at the same times infrastructures, and the idea of what Raphael presented before. Just quickly, because I'm not the operator of this service, but just to give you the development of mobility services in France. The first example is the development of hydrogen taxi, especially in Paris. It's a first use for mobility. Another word is development of buses with Keolis. The idea is, of course, to operate more and more H2 buses in France. And just to give you a few words, not completely to conclude, but to summarize my speech, is that, as I said, we are interested, and all companies in the group are interested by hydrogens, and we are strongly sure that H2 could be a solid alternative to diesel. But in the same times, we have to work together, of course, to work on the cost, to work on technological developments, to have a response to reply to the questions of the autonomy. I don't forget to talk about safety, regulations, and energy efficiency of these systems. So a lot of work to do to go further in this very, very interesting aspect of H2. Another point about the business model is the fact, if we talk about green H2, so electrolysis, the main part of the cost of H2 is linked to the cost of electricity. So we're strongly committed to work with energy suppliers to find the best way to control the cost of electricity in the future if we want to control the cost of H2. And you know that for the moment in Europe, there is, of course, like all over the world, a big energy crisis, and the price of electricity is increasing so quickly. So we are asking what will be the impact on H2 price in the future. Just a few words about what are the 6 main challenges for SNCF. The first one, but that's the same thing for all companies, is to be able to work together, not to be alone. Stronger is to work together is the way to be stronger. To use all our assets, because we are sure that, as I explained, we could use a lot of assets to enhance the value of our contributions in partnerships. Regulations is a very, very important point, and as I've seen in Korea, for free zone, we have many questions about what is the best way to have experimentations to be in the same time compliance to safety aspect and safety regulations. We have to work to develop new expertise and in the same time to develop new technologies to increase the energy efficiency. So I'm just on time, 20 minutes. It was a really pleasure to make these short presentations of H2 for railway in France and in Europe, because I don't mention the development of H2 trains in Dutchland with Linde, just close to this sessions forum. And I would like to conclude to thank you for your attentions. And just before the questions, I would like to ask to my colleagues to join me on the stage. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask us. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention.